I'm Zach. I'm the NDD chair. Work with Hans and Julian to create all the kind of workshops and events we do across the country. And I couldn't be more excited to have Caleb Ward. Caleb, he's in charge along with his partner at Curious Refuge for a lot of amazing stuff that they do as far as teaching the film industry about different tools that are available in that space, and do a lot of great kind of work as far as just keeping up with the crazy changes of the AI world. How's it going, Caleb? Thank you so much for joining us.
It's going well. Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
me. It's going to be really fun.
I watch a lot of your YouTube videos, so it's very strange to be able to talk directly to your YouTube video as we're doing this. Why don't you give us a sense of what Curious Refuge is and what you guys get up to there? Oh, and I just noticed I had a spelling mistake. I'm dyslexic, so in
It's
that slide that I just showed. So anyway, go ahead. What does Curious Refuge do?
yeah. So we are the world's first online home for AI storytellers. We really believe that AI is changing the way that we tell stories, and we essentially offer training to artists. We're in 149 countries now. We train artists in the Directors Guild, Academy Award winners, Emmy winners, like people doing incredible work, like everyone that's in this call. And we also train and empower people who are new to the world of storytelling to see what is possible with AI tools. And so it's really fun to be a part of this new world and to see what is possible, what is not possible, and to give just more context like we're going to do in this call today.
Yeah, really recommend everyone to check out Curious Refuge's site, subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's just a wealth of information there that's constantly updating, and a lot of great just galleries of other work that exists and stuff like that. So Caleb's going to be our master instructor as we go through this crazy world of different tools. Just to give people an idea of what we're going to try and accomplish in the next few hours is this is really kind of uh, designed to be a beginner's guide to sort of AI tools. We're not going to be going through every tool that exists because another tool comes out every day. But this is sort of, if you've never tried them, we're going to try and make it accessible to you because a lot of tools are coming online right now that are extremely user friendly. You don't need to, there's some very complicated ones that look like crazy spaghettified screens that are crazy complicated, but we're going to be focusing on the ones that are very accessible. We're also going to be focusing on the idea of how tools can be used by directors, mostly in the world of concept work. So if you were building a lookbook or a pitch deck or a rip-o-matic or things to get hired on a show or to sell a concept that you're trying to sell, where before you would be borrowing images from all over the internet and cutting other films together to kind of demonstrate kind of your vision, we're going to be looking at all these tools mostly through that lens, not really through the lens of how you can use these tools to create finished work. Both because they're not necessarily all really at the level of finished work yet, but also there's a lot of ethics and copyright questions around that we're not going to be focusing on or getting into. We're really focusing on if you had a pitch coming up, if you had something you were trying to sell, how could you use these tools quickly to illustrate what you have in mind? And a lot of the things we're going to show, that's how a lot of people are using it already. And these tools are really the tools as they exist today. Even tomorrow, they will be different. And we're going to try and do this type of workshop about every 6 months, maybe, to just give a sense of how much they've changed. And if anyone's watching this video a week from now, it'll probably be horribly out of date. But this will give you a sense of where things are at because they change so quickly. Even as I was building this keynote, I had to be ripping things out because they were obsolete. We're going to go over some terminology first, and then we're going to demo basically the four key types of AI: text generators, image generators, video generators, and audio generators. And we'll be answering a lot of questions as we go along. Cool. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about terminology. I was going to put you in the hot seat, Caleb, to explain some of these terms, which you have never heard before. So we'll see how you do. Because it's good to just get certain terminology out there if people haven't heard them before, and maybe there's others you can add in. The first one is a simple one, but generative AI. What would you say generative AI is?
Yeah, that's really the thing that kickstarted a lot of the conversations about AI in Hollywood. You know, AI has been powering a lot of the systems that we've had for years, but generative AI are essentially AI systems that can generate things. So that could be text like ChatGPT and language models. And more prominently and perhaps more interesting for directors is generative AI that can create images and video and sound. And so these AI systems have been around for a while, but they have vastly improved in the last year and a half, and that's why we're having this awesome conversation today.
Yeah. All right. Next one is LLM. What is
Yes.
an LLM?
That stands for large language model. So that would include ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, and just a lot of the text-based language AI tools that you're probably used to using, including the new iPhone that's integrated with ChatGPT and some of
Yeah.
Apple's LLM systems.
One thing I found interesting is that we're used to large language models being about text, but I was listening to some people talking about how AI doesn't understand text, it just understands patterns. And so text is a pattern. But as far as AI is concerned, um, the way that music works is a language. The way that videos work is a language. So LLMs doesn't necessarily mean text. It just means like how mathematics works is a language. And so when they talk about LLMs, the language is really not necessarily text. It's any sequence of patterns that can be understood. And that's what these LLMs start to see is the connections between those patterns. The next one is prompt. What's a prompt?
A prompt, well, it's really funny because I think a prompt is essentially an art direction that you are giving to a system. So that direction could be a text-based direction. It could be a direction for an image or a video clip that you're looking for. But it's really funny because I think that as directors on this call, prompting is might be a synonym for directing in some ways, which is
Yeah.
kind of
And so building on that, what's a prompt engineer?
A prompt engineer is, I would say, a director that knows how to speak to artificial intelligence. So somebody that knows how to communicate well with AI systems to get desired outputs. Because what I'm sure we'll learn on this call today is, just because you have a desire for what you're looking for does not mean the AI system will give you that. So people that are able to more accurately push those systems in the right direction to embody the direction and the aesthetic and just the overall design that you're going for. Those people are very valuable, and we're calling them
Yeah.
prompt engineers now. Who knows what we'll call them careers.
And building on what you're just saying, what is a hallucination?
Hallucinations are really what make generative AI possible. They're kind of small little quirks in the way in which AI renders something, and so AI can generate all sorts of strange oddities, but it's in generating those strange oddities that it can create things that feel somewhat original or new, or it allows you to essentially not get the same result again and again. So the most obvious version of a hallucination might be, a six finger hand, but another hallucination might be a chat GPT answer that doesn't quite align with what is real and accurate and true. And so, hallucinations in some ways are annoying. In other ways, they kind of allow AI systems to generate just more interesting things creatively. And so it's a back and forth that you always have.
Yeah. So speaking of that, the first type of AI we're going to kind of play with quickly. We have a lot to get through, so we're going to be trying to introduce them and move quickly on these. Is generative text AIs. These are some of the main ones that are out there. ChatGPT is probably the one that people know the most, and I'm going to play with that a little bit today. Claude and Gemini are also very similar, very powerful ones. Gemini is by Google, Claude's by Anthropic. Notebook LM is another one I'm going to demo. It's also by Google, but it has some specific things that are kind of designed to minimize incorrect hallucinations. So I'm going to kind of, and it can be very helpful for research. So I'm going to demo that as well. Are there any others you feel like worth mentioning here? Obviously, Meta has some and others, but any you think are missing?
The only one I would mention that I didn't see there is called Perplexity. It's specifically designed for research. So if you are working on a lot of documentary projects or just kind of deep in the research phase, ChatGPT did come out recently with a search feature for the web that makes it
Yeah,
helpful for research, but I think Perplexity is still a little bit better. So I just want to note that, and it's really good about citing its sources. That's a big important thing whenever you're working on an AI project. So one
Yeah,
more.
absolutely. I use Perplexity every day. I think it's a really cool system, and ChatGPT is clearly trying to copy them and catch up. So if you load up ChatGPT, this is basically what you get at the beginning. And to some degree, these little buttons that down here are a good idea. If you don't know what ChatGPT can do, these are some of the a good idea of sort of some of the things that it can do. And as Caleb was saying, you can now have it search the web. If you click this button, it'll then perform a search. But generally, you can just write things into it and have it send things out. Some of the things for directors that it can be good for, I would say, is generally summarizing things or brainstorming things. You can kind of think of it as a mildly dumb assistant who can help you kind of give you the obvious answers pretty quickly. An example of summarizing these engines are very good at summarizing information. So, for example, if I upload a script here from my film, this is a 100-page document. I can just quickly say, write me a 200-word, summary of this script, and it'll read the document. And sometimes for an application or something, you need to do something that's at a certain word count, and it'll instantly kind of give you a rough idea that's exactly 200 words of what. Now, obviously, you would go in here and you would change it, and you would make it more your own, but it can give you a good first draft. And then if you need to say um, 50 words this time, it'll do a new one that's actually 50 words long or whatever, because sometimes you need different versions of that. So that's a good way, an example of how it can summarize information for you. You can also, do things where you ask it to pull out just, uh, you know, give me the top 10 characters that speak in the film. So that's a good way of if you were doing a pitch and you needed to just quickly get a list of who are all the people in the movie. This can give you a quick breakdown of those names, and so these are just ways that you can use it to quickly kind of summarize information out of a document that's quite large. Any other ways you think of, Caleb, that filmmakers can often use, ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, there's many different things that we could take a look at using
Yeah,
ChatGPT, and I'm sure maybe we're going to cover that in the next few minutes. But I guess
yeah,
just sticking with that script example, ChatGPT can do everything. It can give you casting recommendations for some of the characters. It of course does breakdowns. I also like using it even before you have a finalized script to come up with ideas for films, to help with creating treatments. This last weekend, I was working on a film and kind of had around 25 different story beats that I was trying to get to in the film, but there were about three of them that I just couldn't figure out how to like get the connective tissue between the scenes. And so I was able to use ChatGPT to kind of weave between those scenes and help me figure out how, like, just what are just a bunch of different ideas, and really
yeah,
use it as a creative jumping off point. And so I think, like, just again, just to your point, using it like either a dumb assistant or a hungover assistant, I think is like a great way. It's like very creative, powerful, like someone who's just deeply amazing, but also they just went on a bender last night and they're like very hungover, and so just have
yeah.
to.
And a few small things for just how to use ChatGPT. You can have it speak what it's written. You can have it uh, generate in different models. If you click up here, it gives you a different sense of as they update new models and things, they'll be listed here. There's other things you can do where you can actually create your own little custom things where you can always tell it to work a certain way or to think a certain way, and those can be good when you're working on certain projects. But those are some ideas of how to use it. Yeah, go ahead.
I see, Zach, someone in the question here is asked about intellectual property,
Yeah,
and how to basically not train ChatGPT on the information that you uploaded. Are you familiar with how to do that?
no, go ahead. Yeah, tell me.
Okay, so yeah, this is really important. So if you actually go to the top there, to the new chat button,
Here,
yep,
yeah.
yep, click on that, and then at the top it says ChatGPT 4.0. If you click on that, and then click on temporary chat.
Oh yeah,
There you go. So when you click on that, it won't train the model on the information that you upload. So that's very important to
that's
talk
really
about.
cool.
If you have clients,
That's a
sensitive information.
that's a really great point. Cool. Well, one of the things that we're going to do as we work through the other models is we're going to be working with designing characters and getting them, images of them as well as creating videos of them and stuff like that. So one thing that I thought would be kind of fun to do quickly is have ChatGPT recommend 10 different types of characters that we could play with here, and then have everyone who's here vote on which one we should start designing as we go through. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT here in this temporary chat. Hi, I'm here with directors from the DGC. We are going to demo some AI models. We need 10 ideas for characters that would be really interesting to generate with AI. What are some examples that are very unique and visually interesting? Any other ideas of what I should put into that prompt to give us cool stuff?
I think that's good. It's such a back and forth process, and that's one of the funny things with these trainings is that, it's you have to treat it like a conversation, a multimodal experience, like what
Yeah.
we're.
All right. Well, let's see what it comes up with here. So it's gonna give us some different ideas. So a bioluminescent undersea mage, a celestial clockmaker, a flameborn warrior, android samurai monk, time lost bounty hunter, an alchemist of the forgotten world, a galactic shaman. That's interesting. A hive mind queen. So these any ideas? Should I prompt it again, or these could be interesting for people to vote on? What do you think?
Yeah, these are pretty interesting. I'm curious, yeah, if we want to
All right.
vote.
So what we're going to do now is Julian's going to help me out. He's going to put these 10 options, and then everyone can vote on what they want us to start playing with. So the first is an urban dryad. I don't even know what that is, but a modern tree spirit in city life. It's kind of cool. A bioluminescent undersea mage, option two. A celestial clockmaker. That might be my favorite, although that could probably break AI with all the little gears and stuff, but interesting. A flameborn warrior. I kind of like that. A warrior born of fire. An android samurai monk. That could be very cool. A time lost bounty hunter with mismatched gear from multiple eras. That's kind of cool. An alchemist from a forgotten world, draped in garments made of stitched together alien skins. That's that's pretty cool. A galactic shaman, a desert mirage spirit, a ghostly figure with shifting sand skin. That'll be very complicated for AI. And a hive mind queen, a monarch of a hive-based society, uh, an insect, queen. Okay, so hopefully Julian's got some version of that, and we can throw up a poll here. And while he's working on that, I'm going to demo quickly another LLM while he's
And
working on that poll. Yeah, go ahead.
Zach, as we're doing this, obviously some folks are throwing in some questions in the chat. Is it best to
Yeah,
answer as we go,
yeah,
or
go
would?
for it. Yeah,
Okay,
go for it.
great. So
Well,
we have one question I see here from anonymous attendee who asked, how does using ChatGPT for casting suggestions keep from racial stereotypes and bias? And the quick answer is it's not great. It's trained on the biases of our culture, and just statistically, like on the math level, if there's even, let's say, a 51% chance that it's going to be more biased versus less biased, you'll get those answers more in ChatGPT because it's almost like Mad Libs, like it's filling in the information that it thinks you want to hear. So that is 100% an issue, and it's a human issue that we need to, one, work on training these algorithms to help, address some of those issues. And some of my friends are people that are training these algorithms and trying to
yeah,
introduce, or to try to eliminate a lot of the biases that are inherent in the training data. And two is like it's just simply like as directors, our opportunity and responsibility to seek out more representation in the casting that we do. So, they're just suggestions, but as we'll likely see, even with some of the image models later, it tends to skew to the average and typical person that you might see in typical media whenever we
yeah,
are.
because it's drawing from typical media, so it's those biases are built in. You can then try and prompt them out, but obviously working on making them less biased is a great question. All right, so please continue to fill out that poll very quickly while we're waiting for that poll to fill in. I'm just going to share one other model that I've found interesting in my work, which is called Notebook LM. It's a model that Google created that basically allows you to load in your own custom set of data that you can then query. So this is good for when you have a large amount of data that you need to go through. I was doing some research on this film, The Rocketeer, and so the way that this works is you basically click this plus button and you add in sources. These could be documents from your Google Drive. These could be links from websites like Wikipedia or YouTube. You could just paste in text or upload documents. So you kind of, if you have hundreds of documents and tons of videos that are hour long, you can throw them all into this LLM. And you can see here the sources. So a lot of mine were YouTube videos. And then what it allows you to do is you can query just the data that you've uploaded. So this can be, the reason that this can be helpful is it's theoretically more prone to being less hallucinogenic. So you can ask it specific questions like, and it even, it creates some, so I was most curious the differences between the comic book and the movie. And so you can ask it specific questions like that. And it's drawing from all of the things that people have said in these YouTube videos, rather than coming to its own conclusions, and comes with certain things like that. You can also be like, explain or what are the, top three themes, and it can generate that stuff. Another thing that it's very famous for is its audio preview, which is basically it generates a podcast based on everything that you've loaded into it. I clicked on that, so I'm going to take a minute to pop up. It'll also create little things for you. So here's the audio preview. So you can it's generated this live based on the data that
All
I
right,
put in.
get ready to blast off because today's deep dive is taking us high above the clouds with the Rocketeer.
A classic pick. And you've really assembled quite the dossier on this one. YouTube videos, a whole documentary, even some forum finds.
See his art, the detail, the time he must have put into each panel. You start to understand why those deadlines were a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, so you get a sense that you can generate a podcast on a certain very specific topic. You could put a whole scientific paper in there and have it spit out something that helps you kind of, this is just like a research tool that I found when you're prepping for a project can be pretty helpful.
Well, and on that scientific paper note, they did a survey recently where they analyzed scientific papers over the last couple of years, and what they found is the word delve has been used like statistically like 1,400% more, and it's because ChatGPT uses that word way more than typical humans use that word. So
Yeah.
scientists are using ChatGPT to write their scientific papers.
Very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to end our poll. If you last chance to vote, but I think we already have a clear winner. It looks like it's the Alchemist from Forgotten Realms, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, that looks to be the one. Alchemist from of a Forgotten Realm got 23% of the vote. So that's what we're going to use for our for some of the characters we're going to generate. So let me go back over to that and grab that. So this is what it said: a mysterious scientist draped in garments made of stitched together alien skins and Victorian clothing. Has extra arms. That probably is not going to work too well. Potions and devices. Anyway, that's the basics of what we're gonna use. So we'll see how that goes.
Great.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, two quick things. One, Zach, you're not sharing your screen currently. I don't know if you meant to
Right.
share your
No.
screen. But two is someone asked about what happens if someone else uploads their script to ChatGPT without using the temporary feature,
Sure.
without doing the model training. And the quick answer to that is if you are using the team version of ChatGPT, which I believe is $25 per user per month, which I really recommend using even if you're just an individual, just signing yourself up on a team account. Anything that you use and with that team account will not be used to train ChatGPT. So I would probably have in some sort of contract with the people that you're collaborating with that if they're going to be using language models, they have to use ones that aren't they're not uploading your data to train their model.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But that's the
Cool.
limitation. You
No, please,
ultimately
you're
you can't
you're doing
control.
this is great questions. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about generative images and sort of the landscape there. This is kind of a quick snapshot, although this is probably the area where there's the most variety of options in the generative image world. Um, Midjourney is one that's been around since the beginning as having a high quality level. Probably up until very recently was probably the highest quality level. For a while, if you were familiar with Midjourney, you had to use it through Discord, which was quite complicated. They've recently released a web portal that is much easier to use. And I would say they have probably the most customizable model as far as getting to really specifically do the things that you want. So we'll look at Midjourney. Um, Flux and Stable Diffusion are open source models, meaning that they're created in a more open kind of way. And so because of that, there's many, many, many more websites out there that basically are running Flux or Stable Diffusion on them. And so you can kind of use those models through kind of third parties. And then DALL-E is, I only mention that because it's part of ChatGPT. So as you're using ChatGPT, you can ask it to generate images based on what you're discussing with it. There's a lot more here, but Caleb, give us a little bit more context for kind of the image generation models that are out there.
Yeah. So this is a great list. The only major one that I don't see represented here that I would probably want to add is Leonardo, who was
Yeah.
recently acquired by Canva. They're obviously getting integrated into Canva at the moment, but they also have quite a few features that I think filmmakers could find useful, including you can generate images and videos in one platform, which is nice. But yeah, Midjourney I think is the one that we're gonna kind of focus on in this video today. But it creates, I would say, pound for pound, the best overall cinematic result, and it tends to be one of the more easy tools to use. If you are working on a very high-end project where you need to train a custom model and get like very, very specific outputs, then I would say try to use tools like Flux or even some of the really complicated comfy UI setups that we probably won't have time to talk about today. But there's just different tools for depending on the different level that you're trying to approach.
Yeah, I'm hoping in a future one to talk more about kind of training custom models, which can be helpful for something called character consistency. Do you want to kind of introduce the idea of character consistency?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So obviously, one of the challenges, if we were working on, let's say, a pitch deck and we need a consistent character from shot to shot, if you're just typing in a prompt alone, you would really just have to describe the person with a text-based prompt, and it's really challenging to get that person again and again. And so it's really important to be able to train a model on a character so that you can generate them again and again. You know, they need to be wearing the same clothes, their face needs to be the same, their haircut, things like that. And so there are easy tools that you can use, which Midjourney has one of the easiest character consistency tools that you can use. There's also very complex tools that like do custom training, like we were talking about. And those tend to be better, but they're also more complex. So you kind of just need to figure out what level of complexity you need for, the project you're working on. Sometimes if you're just working on a pitch deck and it doesn't have to be totally perfect, you can totally get by with using Midjourney, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think character consistency, I would say currently is the frontier of all the models. Like all the models are sort of competing for exactly how to execute character consistency. It's not all of them. Most of them aren't there yet, and the ones that are barely there. But I think over the next 6 months, that's really where you're going to see the most advancements, where you'll be able to either through audio or video or pictures generate different perspectives of the same person, which obviously if you were to create longer form stuff is essential. Okay, so quickly we're just going to open up. This is what Midjourney looks like if you use the web portal. So very different than how it used to look on Discord. When you first arrive, you've got this page, which is basically a sort of an example of what other people are generating with Midjourney. This can actually be pretty helpful because when you click on any image that someone generated, it'll show you what they prompted into it. And you can then use that stuff in your own prompt, either the text by clicking this button down here, which will copy that text, or the style, or use the image itself for how it's composed. And it can be really helpful for just getting a sense of, a lot of these prompts are quite long. Sometimes they're not that long. But if there's certain styles that you're interested in, like for example, how this guy kind of looks sort of like a puppet, if you wanted to see how to do that, you can just click on anyone's picture that's public, and you can see, this one had a very short prompt, but it had these references, which we'll get into in a second. And these are some of the commands that they used as well, which we'll get into, and you can copy those as well just by clicking on them. But there's a lot of inspiration. You can also search this. So if I said, let's say, movie title, which is something I've done, up comes a whole bunch of different movie title, treatments, which you can then say, oh, wow, this would be really great for my pitch deck. I need exactly this type of thing, but I could then change thick to whatever other word I want, and, able to generate. I often find that putting a really cool title at the beginning of your pitch deck can really help things look very professional. And here you can see that with just a few words, they were able to do that, and you could change it to something else. So for example, I could click prompt here. It copies the prompt that was here. I could change this to Caleb and hit return, and it's now generating that. So that's an example of how you can copy that.
It probably won't do a great job because, unfortunately, text inside of Midjourney is not always the best. It's getting better, but you'll probably get, 3 out of the 4 generations will be bad.
You'll have to do a lot more. But this is where the search is. Sometimes the search is confusing to find because you often think this is the search, but this is actually where you write in the prompts. I've often created prompts based on what I was searching for by accident. But you could do, cinematic landscape or something like that, and get right away see, oh, these are really interesting, and this kind of fits the vibe of what I want. And you can kind of copy things from there of how people have generated things. On the left here is the navigation. So if you click create, this is where you generate things. This is some of the stuff I was playing with as I was prepping for the course. Here's our Caleb ones. Not too bad, although this one is pretty interesting. It's got your legs here sticking out of the L. Which is pretty good. So once you make a generation, they show up here in your Create tab. You can click on it on the left here, or on the right here. It'll show you the other ones that were generated, and you can kind of go through them, and you can also use the arrows on your keyboard. And then from here, you can continue to refine. So there's a lot of options that Midjourney has down here on the corner. You can even click this to create some more, but these are the main ones that you would use. Where it says vary, this is if you wanted to kind of ask it to do the same thing, but a little bit different, which we'll do with our character. Upscaling is when you increase the resolution, where you can also ask it to be a little bit creative when you do that. Zoom is actually zooming out, so adding more image around the outside. Rerun is just to have it go again, but with a little bit of variation. Editor we'll get into in a second. And again, you can use this as this image, or the style of the image, or the text of the image in another prompt, which is what these buttons do. But let's get over to the main meal, which was our nomad. So let's see, what did it say about the nomad? The alchemist, I mean. So how do you think we should describe this? A mysterious scientist draped in garments stitched together alien skins? should we start with that, or what do you think? And do the whole sentence? Let's see.
That sounds good. Yeah, and I'm curious about your prompting structure, Zach, because there's definitely some best practices that I've found on my end as well. But a lot of times.
So let's just use this for now, and then we'll continue to refine it. If we just paste that in and click return, it'll start generating 4 images. Another thing you can do here is if you click these gear icons, it'll come up with some things that you might want to change. The main one you're probably going to want to change is the aspect ratio. So if you're looking to do more cinematic stuff, we'll probably pick 16:9, but you could always change the size to be whatever you want. These ones I don't really change that much, but what do these ones do? Stylized, weirdness, variety.
So variety usually, by default in Midjourney, variety would be at 0. So I think you did turn that up a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to keep that low. 0 is fine. Where you're at 10 is totally fine too. If you go too far, it will go really far away from your prompt, like the original thing that you typed in. So you have to use that there. But whenever I'm talking with people who are directors, art directors, people that understand the aesthetic that they're going for, I like keeping things like stylization down because I want it to be as close as possible to the prompt. So 100 is totally fine, but I probably would avoid going too high because you want to have the creative vision and get the tool to enact that creative vision as opposed to it just, giving you random things. There's a time and place
Yeah.
for that, but generally I like keeping
Does that
that
go
down.
for RAW as well? Do you want to explain standard and RAW?
Yeah, feel free. Yeah.
I don't really know the difference other than I think RAW removes more of its own style, but
It does, yeah. So raw will be a little bit closer to the prompt that you type in versus standard will give a little more stylization. If you're working on a pitch deck, I think it's fine to be working in standard, but if you're working on stills that might end up in some sort of pixels on screen, and you need just a lot of consistency, raw is probably what I would recommend, but both are fine.
okay, cool. Well, from that very first prompt, this is the type of stuff that we got. That one looks very, these are some of these look more realistic than others. That one's kind of interesting. This one literally has no head. Um, so what would we maybe change here to make this look more like it was something that was in a movie, do you think? Or how
Yeah.
would you change the structure of it?
So the way that I like typically prompting is I like to start with the overall aesthetic emulation that I'm going for. So if
Hmm.
this is a cinematic still, I would type in a cinematic still. If it's a photograph on an iPhone, like whatever it is, a
Yeah.
hand drawing of, whatever. So I like defining that first. And so I typically say a cinematic still of, and then I will describe the composition that we're looking for, the main character, where they're at, just describing what the scene is. And then I will add in supplementary information about things like the specific aesthetics. So what's the color grade I'm looking for, the film grain, the lighting style. Midjourney can take all sorts of different directions, and it's pretty good at
Hmm.
taking those directions and giving you different ideas. I do want to note that like you typically want to keep your prompts fairly short, like usually not more than like what would be equivalent of about two sentences long, because when you start getting really long, it's just too much information. It doesn't know how to synthesize entirely.
Yeah. So what are some of the technical things, like you were saying, as far as I
Yeah,
sometimes I know you say like shot on IMAX or like what are some of the things that create something that looks like it's from a film?
exactly. So I would probably say something like 8K, for example, can be a great one because anything that was tagged with 8K probably was shot on a decent camera.
Mhm.
You also can type in, like I said, some color grading. So you could be specific with it. You could do like super basic teal and orange, or you can be a little more abstract. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Teal and orange lighting. You can be descriptive with what type of lighting. Is this, dramatic lighting? Is it soft lighting? Is it high key? Like you can totally get
Yeah.
as specific as you want there. And then you also have the ability to prompt in the camera angle, and that's important too. And so I like typically whenever I'm prompting in camera angle, I'll reinforce it more than one time. So for example, if this is a medium shot, we can say a cinematic still of a person with all the prompting like you did there. And then
Yeah.
exactly, you can put medium shot there at the end. You can totally put it right after the original prompt there. And then sometimes if you're not getting something, just you can go in and just do kind of thesaurus style reinforcement. So medium shot, medium shot angle, just things like that can really kind of push it in the right direction.
Yeah. And then I'm also putting commas in here. Is that something that you normally do?
Yeah, I like doing commas. If nothing else, it allows me to create these in a bit more of a procedural way, as opposed to if we're just getting really poetic with it. That's kind of hard to replicate, and that can be one of the challenges if you're using prompts from the community, because people use some really weird prompting structures to get their beautiful end results, and then when you try to like recreate the same style, it can be quite challenging. Whereas this is a bit more procedural and scalable.
And is it true that sort of the words at the beginning are weighted more than the words at the end?
I don't know if that's true or not, but I typically will always put the more important stuff at the beginning, as opposed
Mhm.
to the end. I haven't fully been able to test that, but I would suspect that that is the case.
Yeah. So you can see here now we're getting stuff that looks a lot more cinematic. We've got that teal and orange lighting. some mysterious, pretty unique looking stuff. I really like how you can customize color this way and style to, this looked very much like concept art, and now it's starting to look like something that if you were pitching a very specific aesthetic, could be really useful.
Yeah.
Um, we don't really
So
have any background here, so we probably should say where we are, I would guess, don't you think?
totally agree. Yeah. So I see some people mentioned like coffee shop or maybe Grand Central Station.
I like Grand Central Station, yeah. Would you put that before or after the comma, do you think? Doesn't matter.
I typically will define that before the comma. So I would say like a cinematic still of a scientist draped in alien skin garments in what we say, Grand Central Station.
Yep.
Yeah. Medium angle of face. Yeah. Yeah. All that stuff. You
I'm going to
have,
take out of face just so that it's a little bit wider. I think the stuff we do later being wider will be better.
I totally agree. And then we also, someone mentioned that they're not a scientist anymore, which is totally
That's
valid.
true. How do we
Uh,
make it a scientist?
Well, sometimes you need to reinforce the clothing that you're looking for after the fact
Yeah.
because it totally can get lost. And that's something that happens with AI. You'll type in something and then it'll give you a result. And then you're like, oh no, I need a little bit more of that. And so it's a back and forth process. You're probably not going to get exactly what you're looking for in that first prompt, and that's super normal.
How about science tools and lab coat? That might help. Let's see what happens. You're going to have to do this obviously many, many times and continue to refine, but hopefully we can find one that we will kind of want to start playing with, off of that. Um, as those generate, I'm just going to kind of show which of these four is your favorite here.
Well, I think personally that number four looks pretty
This one
interesting.
here. Yeah. So I'm just going to show what some of these, oops, I went off of it, what some of these buttons do. So if you click very subtle, it'll make four new ones that are subtly different. So I'm going to click that. If you do very strong, it'll create four new ones that are um, different. Upscale we'll do in a bit once we see one that we really like. Zoom is interesting. It's basic because this one's quite tight. So doing zoom would actually be quite useful. If I click zoom 2x, it's going to get us this picture, exactly this picture, but with zoomed out a bit, which will be really good. And then let's just see how our other generations are going. So here's now our scientists in Grand Central Station. That one's, we're getting somewhere.
And
um,
I'm so curious about this low angle that it's now introducing into all these shots. So
I know, looks like a rap video suddenly. Um, so this one I think is interesting to show what the editor can do. So let's take this one. I'm going to click editor, and now it goes into this edit mode. And there's a few things you can do here. One is you can choose your framing. So you can, if we wanted to make this even wider, maybe I wanted to do this to get even more above, you could do that and click submit, and now it's running that. Another thing you can do is something called in painting. Do you want to describe what in painting is?
yeah, yeah. So in painting is essentially the process of going in and painting in areas that you want to change. So you can paint over certain spots and then reprompt specifically for those areas what you want to see or not see.
Yeah. So
in
an
image.
example why I picked this one is that character we couldn't really see their face, so I'll kind of erase around their face, and then I could change it to say, um, you know, a 60-year-old female scientist, just as an example. I generally don't do a lot more than just do you put more in there, or do you, like, I don't need to then say teal and orange and all that other stuff, or do you?
Usually you don't have to because it will try to blend that new generation with the understood background image. So typically you
Yeah,
don't have to. The only thing I should note is, in the in painting that you did here, it's very tight on the very, very specific area that you're wanting to erase. I do
yeah,
like erasing a little bit more than what
yeah,
I was trying to change, just because it gives the system a more pixels. So that typically I'll overshoot it by like 30% or so, just like you did there.
cool. Great. Well, let's do that again and hit submit. So you can see it's running multiple generations together. So we can click create again and see what it's been working on. So if we go back, these four here are the variations that it was working on, which must be subtly different. Oh no, this is the zoom out. So you can see it made the shot wider, and these are different examples of having it be wider. Here's the first one I did where I didn't make it very, I was too tight on my generation, but you can see how you can change. That one looks pretty good for being but so you can see how you can change the character there. These are the ones where I did a little bit more of and those definitely fit on the body, a bit better. That one's kind of cool. Got a Ghostbuster vibe going on there. So you can see how you can customize specific parts of the image. Another thing that the editor can do, if you pay, this is, they have something called the full editor, which is available if you're on more of a higher end part of the system, and it can do a lot of the same things, and you can change the scale. They have something new called retexturing, where you can kind of take the image and change its vibe, but using the same structure. So you could, for example, say a black and white silent movie from the 1920s, for example, and it'll take this image but retexture. Oh, I think it usually works better if you still describe it. A female scientist standing in Grand Central Station, but maybe I'll put that after like that. So if you click that, it'll generate that style. What's another style we could try?
Perhaps maybe like a storyboard style.
Oh yeah, storyboard. Uh, let's say hand drawn rough storyboard. Uh, let's maybe say black and white storyboard. So you can see here what it's doing is it's taking basically the framing of what we had, but generating it in a completely new style. So this can be really helpful when you're trying to, in your pitch deck, show exact types of framings. You might even find an image or take an image of the exact framing you want of something, and you can upload it and then have it change the aesthetic to match the aesthetic that you have for everything else. So here's the storyboard versions, which you can see. So you could take a photo of your friend and then restyle it using this type of way to kind of get that aesthetic. It can start to be tricky to have the aesthetic be the same across many images, but there's things you can do to kind of try and do that, which I'm going to quickly show as well. That's kind of what the restyling thing is, which is a pretty unique tool. I think it just came out a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So let's go back over to Organize, where you can kind of see all the different images you've been working on here. Let's see. These are the ones where we kind of zoomed it out a bit, which is pretty cool. So something else that we wanted to demo is the different things that you can do with uploading images. So one example is I could take the style of, say, this image and click image here. What it's going to do is it's going to upload that image that I've clicked. And this could be one of your generations, or it could be an image you found on the internet, or it could be something you found within Midjourney. And there's three different buttons here. The first one has a little person, the second one has a paper clip, and the last one has a picture frame. Do you want to explain what those three buttons are?
Yeah, of course. So the one on the far left, the one that has the person icon, that's for character consistency. So if you uploaded a photo of a person or used a generated person from Midjourney, it would reference that person and the clothes they're wearing for the generation. The one in the middle is a paperclip icon. It's for style reference, and basically it will pull the overall style of the image, but not as much the composition. So for example, if we wanted to generate an image again and again that had, let's say, kind of this hazy teal and orange aesthetic with the, really dynamic dark lighting here, we could do that, but we also could ask for a soda can, and it might be something just completely different than the original image, and it would pull an aesthetic that was similar. Yeah, I'm real curious to see how that. And the last one, the image reference, is pulling more of the composition of the image that you uploaded. So not only like the angle and the character and all of that, but also it will also pull in some stylistic elements as well.
Yeah. So if I instead click maybe one of our other ones, like an Android Samurai Monk, and came in here and put that in here and used this rightmost one, it would kind of take the general structure and tone of this image, but do it with an Android samurai monk. So I'll do that as an example. And then maybe the last one, how could I do a character reference? Let me see if one thing you can do is, I'll just search my face. Let's see a good photo here. There's some embarrassing ones. How about this one? Let's see if I can, oh, that one's pretty cheesy. So if I right click here and say copy image address, you can go back to Midjourney, and if you just hit paste, it'll bring in that picture that you did, and then I can click the person icon, and you can combine these so you can have several of them. So we could say this style, but with this person, and I could say smiling director in grand or with teal and blue light in Grand Central Station. see what that does. So we'll go back over to our creation here. Here's our soda can using that style. So you can see how it's very much just from that one image gotten something that feels very similar, even though it's a soda can. So that's a really cool example of how you can use copying of style, which can really help in your pitch decks if you're creating something where you're explaining a certain tone or a certain style. Here's the one where we took the image, but we said a cyberpunk, an Android samurai monk. These are pretty varied, as you can see. So that's one where you'd probably need to start prompting it more. But you can see how it took some of the ideas and changed it there. And then here's the ones where it roughly tried to guess what I look like, which is clearly not doing a great job. But the basics, the basics are there. This is where you can see the character consistency thing being, is right on the edge of being usable right now. But as you go into customizing models and making them more specific is where you can solve that problem. All right, so that's kind of a great example of how Midjourney works. Before we move on to video, I just wanted to also show this website, Kriya.ai. The reason this one is great is this is a website where it basically pulls from many different types of engines all into one website, makes it very easy to use. It's also a website where you can use Flux, which, as Caleb was saying, is currently maybe the leader as far as quality, as far as stuff that looks, really, really great, depending on the model that you're using. And it's a great sort of easy website to use. You can change the models down here on the left. The most premier model currently is called Flux 1.1 Pro Ultra, but these change every day. If we go back to our maybe one of our prompts that we liked, try this one. I'll just copy this text just to show exactly what Flux might do. And you click this button also to pick your aspect ratio. So we'll do 16:9 as well. And click generate. So just like, Midjourney, this will generate different images. Anything you want to talk about as far as Flux or Kriya?
Well, Flux is great and Kriya is great. So Kriya is essentially an aggregate. It's kind of like a website where other tools, you can use other tools in one place, which is helpful. You can't use Midjourney, but you can use just a lot of the other open source models or models that have APIs available. So I would say that it's very helpful, and especially because you can tend to get a lot of different subscriptions. If you're working on AI projects, subscription here, subscription there. If you subscribe to Kriya, you can have one subscription and get to use a lot of different tools.
Yeah, so I think you can see here how like these images, and to a lot of degree, feel much more. There's a lot more going on in these ones, maybe too much, but you can get a sense of what Flux is capable of. And some of this is pretty dynamic as far as looking like it's from a very unique science fiction movie. And to some degree, I think it's almost more creative than what we got out of the other one. But pretty interesting. So that's how. Another thing I wanted to demo, which is I've found to be quite useful, is this real-time generation, which can be useful when you're trying to get a very specific framing or something. The way this works is basically as you change things on the left, it generates a rough version of it on the right. So if I put in our prompt here, this is the alien standing in Grand Central Station, which it did a pretty good job of very quickly. But as you draw things and move things around on the left here, you'll see that it regenerates what's going on the right. So, for example, you can draw shapes. So you could I could put a big square like that if I wanted to have a billboard there, and I can move this around, and you can see that it's generating the image based on the framing of what I'm moving. And then you can continue to do this with other things. So I could do that, but make this red. And right now the AI strength is very low, but as I increase this, you'll see you're basically giving it more freedom to generate stuff. And you can see that as you move these elements around, it's so this can be very, if there's specific framing you're going for that maybe you're having trouble getting out of your generations, I find this very useful. You can also add generated images to this. So if I wanted to say, I don't know, what should we put here, Caleb? The spaceship.
Yeah, like a spaceship, like a live feed of the platform where this is taking place.
Spaceship hangar. Then you'd probably want to add spaceship hangar to this somewhere. Scientist draping alien garment skins, Grand Station, spaceship hangar in the background, maybe. So you can get a sense of basically all this is just to show that as you move these elements around, you can get very specific, and then you can ask it to upres that and stuff. So that and you can change the models as far as you can have it make it look more concepty, or use Flux to have it look more higher end. When there's a very specific frame that I need, I've been finding that to be quite helpful because it allows you to play with it in a way that's very visual, which can be interesting.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I haven't personally used the real-time generations to do what you're talking about, but I could definitely see the potential where once you get that real-time generation to be very close to what you're looking for, you can then take it into a tool like Midjourney or Flux again, generate that image with that quick image as the image reference, and then you have something that's a higher res, nicer version of exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah,
so
that's it. That's exactly what I use it for. So if I'm trying to give an example of a very specific shaped space station that I have in my head, and AI is just coming up with all sorts of wacky stuff, I can basically draw the rough shape of it, get it in the ballpark, and then bring that into other AI, which is good. It also has the ability for you to connect to another app. So if you're using any type of drawing app, if you're an illustrator, you can tell it to look at Photoshop or look at whatever your drawing program is, and as you do your brushstrokes, it's generating live based on those brushstrokes, which is very cool. Very helpful way of kind of zeroing in on what you have. Before we get onto the video, do you want to look at the Q&A and see if there's any questions you want to dive into?
Yeah, sure. Q&A and also live chat. We can address quite a few things here. So first off, we have what kind of RAM or CPU do you need to render at the pace you're working on right now? So do you want to quickly answer that, Zach?
Yeah. Everything I'm doing right now is in the cloud. So my computer isn't doing anything. I'm just using a browser. Everything is happening on the machines of the people that are running these websites, which is what I'm paying them for. So all these websites currently, I have a subscription, and that's going towards the cost of that. There are open source things that you can run on your computer, at which point how good your computer starts to matter. But that's in the more sort of techie side of things.
Yeah, I agree. Any normal laptop, people on iPads have used these tools, so you don't have to have a rockin' machine in order to get a lot from these. How do you connect our Midjourney from Discord to the website that you're using? I think you can literally sign in with Discord now directly into Midjourney's website, so I think it should be a pretty easy connection there. And then I believe all the old images that you've generated should appear in your library, so you shouldn't lose anything. If you're using the Discord version of Midjourney, move to the website. It's much better. The next person said, many of these AI programs require subscriptions, and it becomes costly when you start testing them. Is there one that is free? There are some that are free. Most of the video generators will give you a very few number of generations per day, like 2 to 3. And then there are some free subscriptions. I believe Korea may give you some things for free. with when you sign up, but you just kind of have to test out. Midjourney, for example, I believe their $8 a month plan, like the most basic version, it's pretty solid. Like I've seen some people create some really great things with just that very basic plan. So you don't need to sign up for the most expensive plan, and you don't need to sign up for a yearly subscription. Like never sign up for a yearly subscription because these things change so quickly. Like you might be wasting money because in 3 months you might be using something else. So just month by month, cheapest subscription when you need it, I think is the best path forward if you're picking tools.
Yeah.
Yep.
Answer a few more, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So can these programs export renderings for different file formats like Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop? The short answer is most of the online tools cannot. There are some online tools that do allow you to export in AI and SVG formats so that you can have like vector, layers and things like that. But generally speaking, they're not layer based initially. There are some tools that are looking to do that though, but we're just not there. Can you keep generations private? Yes, you can. You can. There's usually buttons to click and to make them private. And then last question here. As someone who's got experience with all the online tools, what are the crazy AI tools that will take me to the next level? I mean, Zach, do you want to quickly answer that? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Most of the crazy stuff is in the open source world. That's where you have to start using something called what's it called? The squiggly one.
UI.
Yeah. And you can really start getting very custom and training your own models, and that's where you can get really specific stuff. But usually within a few weeks, whatever's happening there starts happening on the easy to use websites. So I would say that the easy to use websites are sort of 2 to 3 weeks behind where the front edge of the open source world is. And if you just wait a few weeks, you should be able to do it with one click of a button. All right. So while we've been talking, go ahead. Yeah, Caleb. What would you say?
Well, just one last thing. Not that we're going to solve all of this in like a quick little soundbite here, but some people are talking about, oh, if AI can do these things, does that mean that, there's no need for concept artists, storyboarders, and, other folks who are involved in the process of putting together a film? And the quick answer to that is, at least what we've seen at Curious Refuge so far, if you have existing skills that allow you to understand the conceptual side of artistic taste, whether that is storyboarding and understanding composition, or it is as a voice actor, understanding like dynamic performance, like that existing skill set is incredibly valuable as we move into this AI ecosystem. And so as we move into the next few years, like whatever that looks like, of course, everybody's just kind of making a guess at this point. But what we've seen so far is that really it just amplifies the creativity that's currently there. And people who have existing storytelling skills, artistic skills, are the ones that are creating the most compelling AI projects. And so I would say to anyone who has existing skill sets listening to this conversation, really just start messing around with the tools and you'll realize, okay, like there's a lot of work still required to get exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, the curation and the artistic eye is a massive part of getting something that's still very interesting. And in my experience, a big part of, not only did we have a huge amount of people requesting this type of workshop, but in my own experience, even in hiring department heads of production designers and costume designers and DPs, as they were coming forward to pitch on films that I've been making, the ones that, if I was meeting 6 DPs or 6 costume designers, usually about 2 or 3 of them would bring in work where they had generated specific imagery to the film that was an example of what they wanted to do, and 2 or 3 didn't. And it was definitely the ones that had done some of the AI imagery looked much more prepared. It looked like they had put a lot more focus into their work and had an advantage. So a big part of why I wanted to run this workshop is because of giving people a lot of your peers may be using these tools in trying to get work. And it's important that we want to make sure that as many people as possible feel like they can use it if they're interested in it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, because we're running out of time, is AI video. This is a good kind of quick snapshot of the current AI video tools that are available, rapidly changing at any given moment. Runway generally has a lot of interesting features, and they're releasing a lot of specific things quite often. So we're definitely going to play around with Runway. Minimax is currently an AI that pretty much probably has the best generations as far as the type of high quality stuff that you're going to get out of a generation looking great, but has a lot less, I would say, tools as far as customization. And then the others, Pika, Kling, and Luma, they're all kind of good and probably cheaper, but not as high quality and are kind of fighting over being in second place. Any others you think are missing from there, or did I mischaracterize any of those?
No, I think that's very accurate. To be fully honest, I would probably remove Pika from this list because I just don't
Yeah.
think it's very good. But Clink can get some good dynamic results if you're having trouble with Runway or Minimax. So I do recommend bringing that into the fold sometimes, but generally Runway is great for iteration. They have a ton of other AI tools available outside of just the generative video stuff that makes
Yeah.
it very interesting. But yes, Minimax, just from a raw, like the physics, the realistic dynamics, it does the best, which is to say it doesn't do great most of the time. And so it really is a back and forth process.
Yeah. It's like 3 bad ones and 1 incredible one, and then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So quickly, I'm not going to play these in full, but just I'm going to demo a few examples of AI video. This first one is an example of an AI trailer for a concept that you might bring into a pitch. That was generated with images inside of something like Midjourney, and then those images converted into video using something like Runway or Minimax.
A boy lost everything the day the world descended into madness. I found him alone. I knew the world that lay ahead of us. So I trained him, prepared him.
So that's an example. Now, trailers are very common using AI because it doesn't rely on consistency. It's just like sort of completely different images that you just cut together with cool music. So that's why trailers are kind of something that most people are doing right now. This is an example of a video doing it with non-human characters or something that's a bit more fantastical.
It's been millennia since the last humans. Some of us thought of them as tyrants. Others viewed them as gods. Without their story coming to an end, ours could never begin.
So in that video, you can see the limit of a lot of AI generators right now, which is it's kind of moving still images to a lot of degree. It's slow push-ins and characters kind of just standing there not doing a lot. That's kind of where AI video has been for the last, I would say, few months. Now a big frontier is getting actual performance into the videos themselves. This is a quick example of something that Runway is allowing, which is now to use actors to as the actual actor's performance as the prompt for the image. So here's an example of what that looks like.
Been waiting long enough. I think it's time to decide. You really think you can just walk away from all this?
I have to. There's no other choice.
There's always a choice.
So you can see that's pretty robotic and pretty uncanny valley and not quite great yet. But that's an example of something that's not a trailer, but now starting to try and actually tell a scene. This is another example of that using the same method, but with more an animated look.
Man, I'm starving. What should we get for lunch?
Not pizza. I can't eat any more pizza.
How about the Austrian place around the corner? I heard they have great schnitzels.
I don't love schnitzel.
Me too. I could really go for a good Wiener.
Anyway, you get the idea. So the limit there on the kind of character-driven stuff right now is that the environments are quite static. There is a way around it that I've been playing around with that we can look at, but generally the stuff that's driving character performance are like locked off static angles, which are, I'm sure that will change in the next 10 minutes, but that's currently where things are at. Anything you want to talk about as far as those videos? I know you're familiar with a lot of them.
Yeah. The artists behind those videos are really talented. So Kevin the Kid, I know, did the first one, and he's just
Yeah,
great at creation
you're
and
right. So yeah, the second one, and Amelia, was by Jay Cinematica. The Snitchell Dilemma was by Nicholas Newbert using Runway. And oh no, that was the last one. And Runway also did that second one, the people talking in the diner. Thank you for reminding me to credit the people. So before we demo Runway, we're going to quickly look at a different website. It's the tool is called Minimax, but the website is called Halio AI, which can sometimes be confusing. But I'll just load that up here. So this is what, if you go to Halio, how do you pronounce this? Do you know?
I always say hi, Lou. I'm not entirely sure.
Halio? Yeah. So this is the tool where you can use Minimax, which is that tool we were talking about that kind of has higher quality video generations. For all of these ones, you can do text to video. So you could describe what it is, we could go back and say, what was our one here? A mysterious scientist draped in stitch alien skins. You could put that into a lot of these tools, and I'll do that here just to show it, the text to video. But they tend to not be very good when you do text. Most people are definitely doing image to video, which is to say that you either take a photo or you do something in Photoshop or you generate the image. However you generate that image, you then upload that as a reference. So if I go here, here's some of the images. Let me just grab, for example, this one. So this is one of the images of our female scientist in Grand Central Station that we had earlier. So now it's going to generate video based on this. So how would you prompt into Minimax, do you think?
Yeah, so prompting in Minimax is different from prompting in Midjourney. I like to say that you have to describe it as a kindergartner explaining to you what happened. So, for example, you might say something to the effect of, the woman walked around the train station, or walked around Grand Central Station. Like, you have to be very on the nose and kind of speak in that kind of strange, I guess what would it be, like third person
Yeah.
conversational tone to describe
I
what
noticed you did it in past tense. Is that a good way of doing it?
uh that I guess you probably say the woman walks, yeah, present.
Yeah, walks.
Yeah.
And then would you say anything else about her movement or the environment or yeah?
Exactly. So just like before in Midjourney, where we would describe the composition and then we would get into supporting, information regarding the style. Now we can get into supporting information regarding things like the camera movement. So perhaps it's a handheld shot.
Yeah.
And just begin to describe the movement. Perhaps there's something going on in the background. With these AI video generators, it can tend to be something that is it can only do so much. So if there's 1,000 characters walking around, you might
Yeah.
not get a result. So just keep that in mind.
Well, let's just see what happens with that one. So the reason we're doing this one first is these generations take a little longer. So, but you can do a few of them in a row. So I'm going to upload another one. What else do we got here? Oh, I didn't download. Let's see. Let me just make sure I get another one out of Midjourney. So I thought this one was kind of cool. So I'm going to click download here, and that downloads the image. And then go back over here. Let's see. That one's here.
One quick note, one of the reasons why we like to use Minimax Hailu that you're looking at right now is simply because a lot of the generations tend to be more real time as opposed to slow motion. I'm not entirely sure why. It's probably something to do with the training data and diffusion models, but when you use tools like Runway or Luma, basically, it tends to generate videos that look like they were shot in like 120 frames per second and just kind of are like kind of slow. So just keep that in mind, and that tends to be a good reason to use Hailu.
Here's an example of trying to get like a performance of an emotion out of it. Anything else you think I could add to this one? Maybe flickering orange light, maybe see what happens. Okay, let's see if it handles that. So this is an example of just how this website works. There's also this button here, which will have the AI sort of add more to the description, but generally that's sort of a bad idea. These are some videos I did before when I was playing with it. This is an example of what Caleb was saying, if things can go really bad. This was like an kind of a guy flying a spaceship, but his movements are pretty erratic and it doesn't look very realistic. But the second one felt a lot better as far as the consistency of the type of it feeling like something that would come out of an actual movie. So if you run them several times, you can get, and then I was doing this one, which in many different examples started to get very crazy and weird. But you can get different levels of things where you'll probably have to kind of run it many times and pick the one that looks good. So while those are generating, we're going to go over to Runway. So this is as Runway generates a lot faster. So, but not necessarily as well. But it's the main one that most people use. And they also offer an unlimited tier, which can be pretty good for if you're doing lots of different stuff. So when you come to Runway's website, the main thing you're really going to click is usually fastest way is just to click Try Now. And it'll bring you over to their video generator. They do have a lot of other, as Caleb was saying, a lot of other different things that it can do, some of which are pretty exceptional. I've used the extract depth quite a bit for doing visual effects work, where it can create a depth pass for incredibly well, surprisingly. But you're going to click Try Now, and that opens up what they call Gen 3 is the name of their model. And up here is where you can pick the different models. You're currently going to be switching between Gen 3 Alpha Turbo and Gen 3 Alpha because different things that you can do with Runway run on different models. But Alpha Turbo is sort of the main one for just putting in an image and getting a video out. So if you here you would select an asset. So you'd click here, you would pick one. So I'm just going to upload our scientists in Grand Central Station. It shows us what that looks like. It says first and last here. So one of the things you can do is you can also upload the last frame and it'll figure out a way of going from the first frame to the last frame, which is something that a lot of people do. But here's an example of how would you prompt inside of Runway?
So Runway, they want you to prompt in the camera movement first. So, I don't know, maybe handheld camera shot, for example. And then colon.
Sometimes people put colons instead of commas here. Is that right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So typically you'll put a colon between the camera, the type of shot, and then the action. So after the colon, now we can describe the action of the scene, very similar to what we did last time.
So a scientist walks around Grand Central Station. Sometimes I put dynamic body language, body movement. Runway is not very good at having bodies move, so sometimes you have to tell it to like move the body. But walking might do that already. And it's a lot faster. So I'm gonna do you can change the length from 5 seconds to 10 seconds. I'm gonna do a 5-second one just to get it going, because often you'll see what it does and go, oh, that wasn't good, and then you'll realize that you need to change your generation. But you can see how much faster Turbo is. For a 5-second generation, it might take 10 seconds or something. So it's not as good, but much faster.
And one quick note, you are on the unlimited model. So Turbo is great because it definitely is fast. I do like using just regular Gen 3 Alpha, though, because it's not a lot slower. Like, honestly, it generates videos in about 60 seconds, and you can generate multiple at a time. So if you are on the unlimited plan, I would kind of recommend going in that direction.
So here's what you can see what Caleb was saying about the slow motion. A lot of what comes out of Runway is in slow motion for some reason. I don't know if there's a way you can get it to not do that, but that is one way that you can do that. So looking at this, we might say scientist walks quickly around Grand Central Station, fast, dynamic movement. It doesn't have no commands, right? You can't exclude stuff.
No, you cannot do no commands inside of Runway, so that would be negative prompting, saying what you don't want to see. But I think the only video tool that you can do that well in at this point is Kling. So you just have to use the right tool for your specific shot. A lot of times, people that do this on larger projects, they'll have some shots and they'll go to Minimax and it won't quite work out. And then they'll take that same shot into Runway and it will work out. And so you tend to use multiple tools to get an end result that you're looking for.
So here you can see I told it to go faster. It didn't really do it, and she's walking backwards. So you're starting to get some weird stuff, which is definitely you're going to have to generate many image, videos to get the ones that are close to what you want to do. Another thing that Gen 3 Alpha Turbo can do is the second button here, camera control. So here it allows you to potentially put in a lot more specifically what you want the camera to do. So we could tell it that we want it to dolly sideways like this. We could, if you do pan, that would kind of give you like an orbiting type move. You often don't have to drag these very far, actually. Like a little bit goes a long way. You can always click clear here. You can also grab here and move it around. So if you want to do a zoom out, you could go like that with a weird roll, and you can kind of get a sense of what it's doing. I'll just do some of the zoom out as an example with a roll, generate that. Let's try one where it just, here, I'll clear this and have it go like that, and maybe down because we're doing such a low thing, and tilt up and pan right. So you can kind of get a sense of how that move is going to go, and generate it again. And so you can have multiple generations going, and you see on the right here, it's showing you where those are. So that's kind of an example of how the camera control tool works. But I think that there's, and those, you can get interesting things, and some of it, you can see here now we're getting a little bit more of a cool sort of Dutch move, which again can be interesting in a project that you're pitching as far as like how you want the camera to move, but it still feels very slow motion. And here's the other video that we had generated.
Whoa.
Not really doing a lot in her hand. Her pocket is very large. So you can see that that's kind of the experience that you're going to get as you're generating stuff. It's going to be, and you can do longer videos and stuff, where the real part that I think directors are going to be interested in is what's called video to video, which is basically where you film something and then you use AI to kind of change the style, like kind of like we were doing the restyling before, on top of that. But before we do that, let's come over and look at our Minimax videos to see how those look. So this is the Minimax one of walking around Grand Central Station in a handheld shot. Did not do very well. It's still very slow motion. And let's see how this other one worked out.
Whoa.
Very scary.
Very angry.
Very angry and saying who knows what. But you can get a sense of, it's still playing with the image that we did. So that's that. But I'm going to start talking about video to video, because I think that's where you start to really see how directors. Yeah, go ahead. There's something else you want to add?
Answer, just one question from the chat was about the environmental impact of AI, which I think is a very important conversation to have.
Yeah.
So obviously these AI systems, really power is kind of the bottleneck for a lot of these companies developing these systems. And so they're doing everything from opening up new nuclear power plants to doing all of, like just wild things to generate enough power to power the new systems. A couple things to note when it comes to the power usage with AI systems. More power is used training the models as opposed to using the models. So that a lot of the responsibility, I think, towards the climate offsets and really taking care of the environment falls on the companies that are training these models, which I think should definitely happen. On the second half of this is the power consumption that you use personally. And to that note, you can use online tools to calculate the power consumption of both, the estimated power usage of your machine with using the model, and then, how your specific instance using AI to generate images and videos, how much power it used, so that you can think about offsets and just things like that to help alleviate some of the environmental impact there. We are actually working on a documentary right now about this idea, basically comparing and contrasting the environmental impact of traditional filmmaking versus AI, and working with some experts to answer that question, because it's not, film sets are also not incredibly environmentally sound places as well, and so it's curious just because I think there's two different ways that they are impacting the environment. So yeah, we'll let you guys know when that comes out.
Very great points. Yeah, thank you for keeping an eye on the chat, on the Q&As. Please keep posting your questions. So the next kind of topic I wanted to talk about is video to video, which is, a lot of this is how to get sort of, as you can see when we were doing those generations, it was pretty much very random what we were getting out of, you could kind of tweak it and tell it, but you have to keep generating and generating and generating to get, what you want out of the AI. And as directors, that can be extremely frustrating because we're very specific about what we want to show. And relying on its wild hallucinations can be very time consuming and feel also like you're kind of losing your authorship. And where a lot of these models are going is actually where you actually film something, either with an actor or just an environment with your phone or with any type of camera you want, and then you apply the AI sort of restyling on top of that, and that puts a lot more of the control in and authorship into the director's hands, which I think is um, personally an area that I think is really really interesting. Um, so here's some quick examples of what I mean. So some of these are more outlandish than others, but it gives you an idea of how the technology works. So here's an example of someone just riding a bike, and at first they've told it to be like a Greek statue in the Louvre, which you can see, has that kind of restyling over it. But you can see how this image is driving what the AI is doing on top. Here they're doing some sort of Greek statue, and now they're making it look, like Penny Farthington, whatever. But you can see how the aesthetic of what the actor and what the camera is doing is being transferred and driving the kind of look of it. Here's another example where someone's just using some books and a bottle to basically do different types of aerial shots and time lapses. So here's how you could customize a drone shot, for example, with just some books, which you may not be able to afford or be able to really capture. You could even use this as a way of showing your actual drone operators what you what you have in mind for how it should look. This is kind of a way of doing previs. This one's kind of a wild example of this is what they shot, which is sort of a silicone head, but then restyling that head, you can get all sorts of really interesting sort of visual experiences just by kind of doing almost what you would do with visual effects on top of much more simple objects. This is another very good example of that, where this is something that someone generated inside of Unity, just using gray shaded. You'll see here, this is what they animated. They just showed someone walking, a rough character walking across a crevasse with a very simple animation, but then used Runway's video to video on top of it to kind of do the texturing and the special effects and visual effects. So this is really interesting for when you're maybe exploring in development with your team, how you might want certain actual visual effects to end up or special effects to end up. And with just filming very basic elements, you can create that type of aesthetic, which is very cool. Here's also a quick video. Some of you might recognize this guy as a friend of mine. I shot this a while ago of just him looking around, sitting in his chair. And then I asked it to make it look like he's on a spaceship. This gives you an idea of it's using the framing and the performance of what I filmed of him, but for some reason gave him, green gloves and did other things. But the other thing that's kind of interesting from this perspective is because it's driving off the video that you gave it, you can rerun this many times and then just using very simple cropping techniques, take the parts of each generation that you want and recombine them like you would with simple split screens and stuff. And that's a way of combining, because the underlying sort of structure of the image is based on what you filmed. So they'll layer, very well. There's another example of where I asked it to look, Victorian, for example. So you can see how it's adding a lot of the kind of flickering orange light and stuff like that in a way that's really interesting. There's some weird stuff going on with his throat, and it kind of added this weird black hat on his head. So I might run it again and then just crop out his head and use the head from one and the background from another. But that's an example of how you can use video to kind of drive things, which can be, very powerful. Is there anything you want to talk about as far as video to video goes?
Well, I mean, to your point earlier with that kind of gray shaded animation example, and then kind of using AI to up-res or to render essentially, I think is a big area that a lot of animators are looking to right now. And specifically, like we're launching our first AI animation course that's the first week of December. And a big part of that is basically using AI systems and custom models to render out the scene. And it saves obviously a ton of time in the render process, and you can do some really impressive things. So I think that's a really smart use case for video to video.
I'm quickly just going to demonstrate it. So I'm going to film myself walking around this boardroom. Maybe I'll be in Grand Central Station. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm going to quickly, and I could say something. What should I say? Oh no, I'm going to miss my train. Something like that. Okay. So here's an example. I'm moving my computer so you can get a sense of how you can change the perspective. But so here we go. Oh, I'm gonna miss my train. Oh no. Oh, camera close, camera close. There. Okay. Okay. That was ridiculous, but it gives you a sense of having a source video. So I'm going to quickly send that into maybe, and why don't you answer a few more questions and I'm going to upload that to Runway.
That you saw earlier. He said that even when he prompts in Runway, he hits that render button 5 times before he even sees the first one, just because he's trying to see as much as possible. It's really about iteration and picking and choosing the right one for your end result. And sometimes you just got to fight with the program a little bit. Like it's just part of it. They're the hungover assistant, so they're not going to give you what you're looking for every time.
All right. So here I've clicked to add the video that I just filmed. The first thing it's going to do is ask you to crop it. So I'm just going to click that and it's going to kind of crop it to the frame rate that they use. To do this well, I had to kind of re-export the video to be slightly smaller than what your computer or your phone needs. A lot of resolution doesn't necessarily go a long way. But let's say, so what should we put here? A scientist walk, all right, so maybe handheld camera first.
Yeah, I don't know if you need to prompt in the camera movement if you're doing video to video.
Right, good point. So I'm going to put a scientist walks in Grand Central Station, and then just because we did it in the other ones, teal and orange dynamic lighting. Probably good. And then you just click generate, and that'll give you an example of how it's going to kind of use the driving video that I did to generate an image fairly quickly. I've noticed, I'm curious your thoughts on this, because when they also have something called Act One, which allows you to kind of film yourself acting, and then it'll move a character, which is how they did those last two films that I showed. The problem with those is the backgrounds don't move at all.
Right.
But if you do video to video, it basically does the same thing, but allows for the background to move. I don't know if you've played around with that a bit, but is Act One better than video to video?
Act One, well, it solves a different purpose, I think, than video to video. Because Act One, it really just animates the face. It doesn't do the background. I would recommend that's pretty cool. Not bad. I wouldn't say that's Grand Central Station. That looks more like
No.
corridor in Grand Central Station.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is when you do video to video, it very much uses the geometry. So like those are the lamps that are behind me in this room. It very much is using the geometry of the space that you're in. So if you were to use this for a project where you want a concept, you kind of need to go, you would need to go into like maybe a large space and then tell it to make it look like Grand Central Station, but it's using the edges of all the stuff that's inside the picture that you have. So it's adding the texture of Grand Central Station, the sort of polished stone and stuff, but it's definitely using the size of the room that I was in. The key thing I wanted to show here, though, is what it's doing with the lighting, is that it's using that teal and orange lighting and relighting the image of myself was very flat, and it's generating a lot of that stuff in a way that's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
but let's move over to go ahead. What else are you
Well, and just to the directors that are on the call here, when you're in post-production, there are already AI relighting tools like in DaVinci Resolve, and those are using machine learning systems to generate, your ability to relight. Those systems are only going to get more advanced. Same goes for color grading. And so having the ability to control some lighting in post up to a point is very much a real opportunity that is just going to increase over the next few months and years.
I tried to upload our character, but it said that it wasn't human enough. That didn't work. Let's see if we had any other ones we want to grab here. Those are terrible. This one's maybe too close. Maybe this one. No, it's a bit too much stuff on her head. What do you think?
Yeah,
do this one and maybe zoom it out.
That one might be. A few more just questions from the community here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you download the videos? What are the resolutions? So some of the default resolutions, they tend to be about 720p, give or take, depending on the tool that you're using. So obviously, that's not great for doing any sort of professional output. And so you typically want to use an AI video system to upres. So there's a tool called Topaz Video AI that's your best option for doing AI upresing. It's not perfect, so it will not look as good as, of course, if you went and shot that thing in 4K, but it'll look pretty good. So I definitely recommend using that tool if you can. One more thing, just quick shameless plug here. All of the stuff we've talked about so far in this video, we talk about in our AI filmmaking course at Curious Refuge. So if you want to go into more detail, because 2 hours is not enough time, I think all of these things, we of course train all this stuff. We have TAs to assist. That's the last of the pitching, but just so everyone feels there's some sort of area where you could learn more.
Pitch away. Your knowledge is very valuable to everyone who's here. So okay, so I got this image, which just if you were watching as I was working, we said this picture's too close. So I clicked the 2x button, which it rendered it wider so that we got more of this person's head. And then I uploaded it to this, which is you click Act 1. And this is Runway's version. There's a few other websites that do this as well, where it allows you to sort of animate the character. One way you can do it is upload your own video. You can also record it right in the website, which I'll do here. Just to show you an example. So you click start recording. I don't know if you'll be able to see on my end, but what should I do for this person? Maybe I'll look up and say, hi, Caleb. That could be good.
Beautiful.
So let's try this. Hi, Caleb. Was that creepy enough? Hi, Caleb.
It was the right amount of creepy. That's great.
Okay, so I'm going to click use, and that'll give you an example. Now, obviously, this is me doing it, but if you were working with actors or other collaborators, you could, do all this type of stuff. So here's the driving video of my performance. Here's the picture that we did in Midjourney, and you click generate. Every time I do it, it gives me this warning. I don't know why, but the warning doesn't seem to matter. But it'll generate. That might take a little bit. These ones tend to take a little bit longer, but we'll come back to that as it's coming along. I also took this video to answer that voice question. I clicked the download button here, which downloaded that video, including the sound that was in it.
Camera close, camera. I'm gonna miss my train. Oh no. Camera close.
Okay, so I downloaded that video, and to the question of AI voice stuff. So one of the things you can do is there's a few different websites that do AI voice work. The main one that most people use is called 11 Labs, which is extremely easy to use and extremely high quality. It does a whole bunch of different crazy things that can be really helpful. Even the thing like voice isolator can be really helpful in post. It's very good at cleaning up audio if you have a very noisy environment. It can do text to speech if you want to, have generate text. Generally, I think Caleb and I would also always tend to use a human performance that then you may affect with AI rather than use AI to generate the text itself. So the way that you often do that is something called voice changer. Before you do voice changer, though, it can be good to go to click voices, click library, and you can kind of browse all the different types of voices that they have. A lot of very different types of voices. You can also click up here. You can find ones that sound like narrators. You can find ones that have more character-y sounds. Here's some examples.
Dream.
Life is what happens while you are...
Dreams come
not very
true.
good.
If we did the things we are capable of.
Those ones are kind of terrible, but you can also put in things here. So if you wanted to say old, you could put that in and it would come up with voices that
It
sound
is not
more
so
old.
important.
That one's terrible. There's got to be a better example here somewhere. How about
자신을
this one?
믿고
Oh, that's in a different language.
Our distrust is very expensive.
Before you put on a frown.
These are all terrible. Usually
No
they're pretty good.
yesterdays are ever wasted for those who give themselves to today.
I don't mind that one. I'm going to go with Edith and put that. So you click here and you say add, and now it's going to add Edith to my library of voices. I go over to voice changer and click upload audio. Here is the video that we generated of me talking in Grand Central Station. Just click open. It brings that in. Here you pick which voice you want. So I'm going to click Edith and then say generate speech. And so it's going to take what I said, but put it.
I'm going to miss my train. Oh no. Oh, camera close, camera close.
So you can imagine there, you could then export that audio and marry it with the video. And so that allows you to, you can start to imagine that if you were doing a demo project, it would allow you to, you could act or you could hire an actor to generate performances. You could then apply that to characters that are, don't match the kind of characteristics that you have. So you could change the gender or the type of voice and all that type of stuff, and use both the imagery and the audio to kind of create really unique voiceovers and characters as you're kind of figuring out, the demos of how your project might come together. Is there anything else you really like 11 Labs for?
No, I mean, that generating the voices is great. They also have the ability to generate sound effects. I don't find that to be as useful, but it is just worth noting that sound effects in full that
so
is
Grand Central Station. You could write that in and say generate sound effects, and we'll see what it comes up with.
Yep. They also have, I believe it's in the projects panel there on the left. I believe you can create a new project, and basically it allows you to use your script. So you could just upload a script, and then you could have it read the script with different voices for, as your actors' lines are coming up. That can be a great way to send your script to people so they can listen to it. And, obviously there's limitations there, but it can be just a good way to make it a little more easy to communicate your vision with folks.
Yeah, so this is another website I just want to quickly show called Infinity AI. It basically does the same thing as Act One, but much faster, and generally has better. You can't drive it with your own performance, but you drive it off of audio. So I just uploaded our image, uploaded the audio that we just got from 11 Labs, and then click submit to queue. And it's basically going to use the audio performance, which could be your own performance or whatever, and then generate sort of a video out of that. Let's see if let's see where the video would go. But anyway, I'll come back to that if it pops up. But this one is very similar to Act One on Runway, but tends to do it with better performance.
Mm-hmm. This one's very interesting because it is actually going to generate the performance based on the words that were uploaded. So that's something that is new and kind of a new frontier of a type of entertainment. But the results aren't quite as good as what you would get from Act One at this point, but they will be very good in the future.
Yeah, this is kind of a new tool to play with. Yeah.
I see a question here where someone was asking, is this going to replace current performance capture technology, no longer need for ping pong balls over the actor, dots on their faces, etc.? The short answer is in some cases, yes. Not in all cases, but the AI motion capture tools are increasingly getting very good. One of the best examples of that is an AI film that came out recently called is it Where the Robots Grow? I believe that was the name of it. And it's a feature-length motion captured animation film that it didn't use traditional motion capture. It just used basically video of actors performing, and it filled in the data, and it did a pretty good job. So the short answer is that yes, there will be use cases, but if you really want fine-tuned fidelity in those mocaps, you kind of need to use traditional tools still, but that might not be the case in a year.
Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of, uncertainty of how these types of things will affect sort of job categories and people's roles. But I think a lot of this type of stuff where it's taking the performance from actors and taking the framing from how you hold the camera and taking the environment for how you framed it, a lot of this stuff is pointing to a version of AI filmmaking where it is still very much driven by a lot of the things that we're used to as far as anything that's important to you that you want to set up in the real world in the setting, you can use, and it will then add elements to that on top of that, which can be really good for prototyping things at this stage, and can be interesting for trying. You can film a scene and then try it with many different types of lighting and discuss that with your team and then go and execute that in your actual film. All right, well, we have 7 minutes left, so let's just do a speed round of questions. And see if there's any other things we can answer for people. Any good ones in there that you want to answer?
Let's see here, and feel free to ask questions, whether it's in the chat or in the Q&A. We're happy to hop on these. I have seen a few Canada-specific questions. I don't know if that's something to have in a different conversation, but that's definitely outside of my wheelhouse. We had some lawyers, at least from the United States, on in our AI filmmaking course that answer a lot of, like, for example, like practical questions regarding copyright and IP and things like that. But
yeah. I can quickly chat about that from the Guild perspective. We have a lot of really smart people at the Guild working on the questions around copyright and the ethics of AI and how it relates to the workplace and the laws in Canada and the different bills that are being pushed forward through government. And we have workshops coming up that are entirely about that subject. And also I can tell you that everywhere where that type of subject is being discussed at a government level, that the DGC is there putting creative rights, discussions and copyright and kind of authorship right at the forefront of those conversations, and look for many more workshops and panels on that topic in the future.
That's great. These are going to be random, so unconnected to that last point, which is a very important point. But what is the time limit for the video we could customize? I think what they're talking about is text to video or image to video, which is to say 10 seconds is the single generation limit, and then you can extend the videos. When you start extending them, it gets kind of weird. So really the quick answer to that question is 10 seconds.
Yeah. I just want to quickly show this. So our Act 1 video did not work at all. So I'll quickly show how terrible it is. So you can see there.
Hi, Caleb.
It's completely. I mean, it depends what you're going for. Maybe it's a dream hallucination sequence. So that didn't work at all. But I do want to show some quick examples of what it looks like when it does work. So this is a demonstration of Act 1. You can kind of see how in this limited situation where the actor is facing forward, the camera is not moving, the actor is very stationary, you can get some performance level type stuff. Here's another example of the same thing where someone's reading a book with an old man's voice. That gives you a sense. There are some leading edge type tools that are coming. One main one that's really at the forefront right now is called X-Portrait 2. You can see that here it's getting extremely high fidelity sort of generated material from the performance capture. You can see there with the tongue and all sorts of other stuff with just how the face is moving, that as things progress, the fidelity of how these images are generated and how actors will be able to drive them with the performance will really, start to get to a place where it's hopefully starting to get through that uncanny valley to some degree.
Yeah. Yep, I totally agree. And someone in the questions, they were actually talking about video to video and what the time limit is, and I believe it's 60 seconds is what you can do with that.
Great.
We have another question. Have you tried Sora? How does it compare to what you saw today? Yes, we have tried Sora, and it is pretty awesome compared to what we saw today, but it's not on a different planet. So
and just Sora isn't available for everyone to try, right? You want to describe that, or describe what Sora is?
Yeah, Sora is the video model that OpenAI released about a year ago, or they announced, I'm sorry, about a year ago. I believe it was January of 2020, 2024, this year. Wow. Yeah, it's using a different way of generating the video. So instead of like a diffusion model where it kind of puts noise on the next frame and kind of like interpolates between those frames, it creates a 3D world. And so it can generate multiple shots from a single prompt, and it just has a lot of other customizable features that we can't fully talk about yet. But it is powerful, but it's it's still limited. So it's still it requires a lot of work to get what you're looking for from it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that probably a lot of people should take away is like a lot of these tools. When you see that some of those finished trailers that I played, they probably did hundreds of generations for each shot to get the ones that did exactly what they wanted, and then cut together just the best of into a trailer. And so there is still a lot of effort and time that goes into it. A lot of the techniques I've been using as well is using blue screen and green screen elements to single out the different parts of the frame so that I can rerun just a little piece of it that I need over here, get what I like for that, rerun for this piece, and then comp them all back together so that I can basically take the best of many generations into one image. So there's still a huge amount of sort of multi-generation and work that's needed to kind of still get what it is you're looking for.
And Zach, do you want to like quickly explain how you do that? So how would you go about isolating, for example, a subject from a background and kind of make that green screen?
I can quickly show an example here. This is a bit more higher level, but it's using techniques that I think a lot of people on this call probably are familiar with. But if I go into my library, where's assets here? Okay, so these might not load very quickly, but so here's an example of this loads. So this is an image that was generated inside of Midjourney of just like a sci-fi bedroom. And so I also had this character that in the same shot was generated inside of Midjourney, but I cut the character out and put them on a magenta and a green screen so that I could key them separately. I did this in 2 different colors so that when I run this through Runway, it would kind of understand that there's a surface here that's in the foreground and a surface in the background. And then when you run those through the engine, let's see if the generated video is an example. Lots of different examples here, but so here's an example of what was generated. That did not work at all. There's a lot of these that didn't work, but you can see that it maintains the colors of the green screen and so that it allows you to key that stuff out later. Here's an easier example of like, I just had this little creature on green that, I tell it, this is a creature on a green screen. A lot of these don't work, but so there's a better, then I can key that out and comp it into the frame that I had before, which was something like this of an environment. I could have it running along this environment. Whereas as Caleb will know, if I put this creature into this environment and told it, do this for the environment and do this for the creature, it can't do that very well. So for example, it's really good at things like walk cycles. So I put in this creature and just told it to do a walk cycle and had Midjourney add the shadow and Runway adds the moving shadow. And then with comping, I can then easily take that character and add them into add them into an environment where I have them walk through the environment, something like this. And so I can then have that character walking through this environment by generating the background and the character separately. The main reason for that is it means I can do many generations of the character until I get one that looks right. And then here's another example of, I had this creature that was like, has lots of green goo coming out of it. But I was trying to get this character to be interacting with that goo, which you can see it's doing the goo on the creature, but not doing this guy with the bucket at all. So I separated them out and, was able to run many generations of the guy with the bucket and separately. And some of them do not work. But as you go through these, eventually I get one, and his head's being distorted, and you got to keep doing all sorts of weird stuff. And eventually you get something that works. This was where I actually started trying to get the bucket to generate with it. And eventually you get something, no, that didn't work at all. And so you just keep trying and trying and trying. This is another example where I was trying to get a flock of these creatures running around. I couldn't really get them moving in a way that looked realistic. So then I started rendering them separately. And, it allows you to kind of, then in compositing, I can pick the ones that I like and put it all together and get shots that end up looking, really interesting. So that's this is also an example. Oh, that turned him into a child. That makes no sense. Here, this is a good example. So now I've gotten the performance I want from that character and rendered the ground so that the ground kind of works with that. And then I can composite that guy into the foreground of this shot so that he's kind of, gesturing after them. So those are ways of and then tracking him into the shot. So that's a bit more advanced, but it's a way of generating elements separately, telling Runway they're on a blue screen so that it understands that. And then that allows you to customize, the imagery in a better way.
That's really really cool workflow. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. All right. Any last quick words of wisdom, Caleb? We've gone past our time limit here. Tell us again where people can find you. What courses do you have coming up? What are the different ways that you get your information out into the world?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So you can find us at curiousrefuge.com. We are an online course provider. We train artists at every major studio. We train teams. We train individuals looking to, learn how to use AI in their workflows. So we have an AI filmmaking, AI animation, AI documentary, and AI advertising course. So you're more than welcome to come check us out. We also have a YouTube channel. I do a series called AI Film News, where every Friday we come out with all the news that you need to know as a filmmaker as it relates to AI. I try to make it basically the one source that you need to go to just get up to speed because things change. And so if you can only watch, one video a week, I would recommend checking that out. And we also have a newsletter that we send out every Tuesday. That's, the latest film news, and you can subscribe on our website, and we'll just give you a breakdown of what you need to know. So, and we have job opportunities and collaboration opportunities, contest, all the fun stuff that you would want. So definitely feel free to reach out. If you ever need anything, we would love to help with you, whether it's, navigating what tools to use, creative projects and questions you may have and snags. We also have, lastly, a Discord community that you can join if you go to our website, just that blue button in the top right corner. You can join and you can ask questions. We have a huge network of folks around the world, and we'd love to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all of you guys for coming out. We had 150 directors here all night from across the country, which is really special, and other countries out there, which is great. I saw one question in there that was asking, how did I become familiar with how to use these tools? And I will say all of it is from Caleb's videos. So the AI Film News of the Week video is extremely helpful for just being a quick 15-minute thing, giving you a sense of cool new things to try and to help kind of elevate your own work. One thing I like to say, I know a lot of this stuff is very scary, and a lot of the uncertainty around what AI will do. And it very, very much may be the end of the entire planet. But as it relates to our industry, I think one of the things that was a turning point for me that I would just kind of leave for the people in the room that are very concerned about the future of their career path and kind of their creativity is that I think that there is going to be change in our industry. And one thing that really helped me think about how to think about this is that, and I think this is true, is that AI isn't going to take your job. It's someone who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. And so a big element of this and all the other reps across the country felt like this type of workshop was important, just so that all of us are as trained as we can be to use this to accentuate our own creativity and help you get hired on new projects, help you demo new things that you want to sell. And the more that we want to make sure that you guys have the tools to be competitive against all the other directors that are out there so that you can be even more creative and even more competitive. So hopefully this has been really helpful. We'll probably do this again sometime next year once all these tools have completely changed to try and we'll do the AI film news of the half year, summarizing everything Caleb's talked about in the last 6 months. And look forward to many more of our other workshops, our directing for television workshops, our feature workshops, our MW workshops. All that stuff is continuing. Please check your emails and always check out directors.ca for everything that we're up to. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a really great evening.